With Loveland Water and Power Customer Relations. Thanks so much for joining us today for our Let's Talk Tuesday Facebook Live Q&A. Today's topic, education and internet. I'm here with educational professionals from all over Loveland to answer your questions. We've got a few questions to get us started, but if there's anything specific you want to know, be sure to post them in the comments below and we'll answer them later in the show today. So this is a big discussion for our community and an important decision. We hope that this Q&A provides you with the answers and information you're looking for as we continue to explore the possibility of bringing broadband to the Loveland community. So, without further ado, let's talk broadband, and specifically education and internet. With us today, we have Brianna Reed-Harmel, Project Manager. We have J.D. Walker, a Technology Specialist with the Thompson School District and member of the Loveland Communications Advisory Board. We have Kim Akeley-Sharon, Executive Director of the Thompson Education Foundation and Loveland Parent. Tom McInerney, former educator and another member of our Loveland Communications Advisory Board. And then last but not least, we have Heather Luckchek, Executive Director of Loveland's Ames Community College campus. Welcome and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start off with a brief introduction from our education professionals. We'll start with you, JD.
As you said, I'm part of the LCAD. I've also been with Thompson School District since 2010, and I'm a network engineer. I've lived in Loveland for a couple of years and northern Colorado my entire life. And I'm actually a former student of Thompson School District, so I've had the opportunity to see how technology has developed over a pretty wide number of years, so it's been pretty nice.
Great, thanks for joining us. Kim?
Hi, so I've been the Executive Director of the Thompson Education Foundation for just over 6 years now. And my family and I chose Loveland in 2001. We moved here because my husband and I knew this was going to be a great place for us to raise our kids and raise our students. And so both of my boys have both graduated, but they went K-12 through the Thompson School District system.
Great, thank you. Tom?
I recently moved to Loveland in 2012. I was a public school teacher, elementary and middle school teacher for almost 10 years before I recently started working with creating trainings for Hawk Company. And I work with JD and about a dozen other citizens on the Loveland Communication Advisory Board as well.
Fantastic. And Heather?
Yes, I'm Heather Luckchek, the Executive Director of the Ames Community College Loveland campus, and we have 4 campuses, the main campus in Greeley, Windsor, and Fort Lupton. But the Loveland campus has been there for 31 years. I personally have been in Colorado for almost 31 years as well. Graduate of Colorado State University, and it's very exciting to see all the broadband initiatives going on in the area.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for taking some time out of your busy day to join us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. So before we get started on our education questions, I'm going to turn it over to Bree for a quick update and overview on broadband. So the City of Loveland's been looking at bringing broadband into the Loveland community since 2015. And October 23rd is the date in which final details will be presented to City Council for consideration to make a decision. So can you outline for us what the vision statements are for Loveland broadband and some details from your perspective on how this would impact education in our city?
Sure. So since we started this program back in 2015, we started our feasibility study shortly after the election in November of 2015. And our city council had given us some vision statements to help guide us through this process. That included citywide access, so every resident and business had to have the ability, the choice to connect. We had to have it be reliable, it had to be affordable, it had to be fast, and overall it had to provide good customer service. So as we worked through that feasibility study, which concluded in December of 2017, we found that there was a lot of comments that came up during our surveys and our interviews with our community around accessibility for our schools, but also for not just in the schools, but also at home as well. And so we felt that education is a huge issue in our community, and internet access is a key way that people connect and interact in the education environment. So this was a great way to really bring that topic to the forefront.
Great. All right, so this question is for Tom, but anyone, if you have any thoughts, do feel free to chime in. So, Tom, can you give us an overview of your experience with technology and education, specifically curriculum and homework dependent on internet access in the classroom?
Sure. In Chicago, I was a middle school teacher in 6th grade and moved out here and did K-5 technology teaching, because it was the specials, kind of like you might think of music or gym. But it was regardless of if I was in the regular classroom or in a specials classroom, having access to technology and internet at home was pretty important. It was significantly linked to student growth and mastery of particular subjects. In Chicago, we were able to get a couple of grants to utilize things like laptops in the classroom, and then create accounts for Khan Academy, and Study Island, I think, was another one for reading, and students that had access at home and could work on those things at home. There was a statistical difference in their growth and mastery scores at the end of the year. And when we moved out here, there was also a large difference where we started teaching research skills, completing projects, even as simple as typing skills, where if we had a cloud-based typing account, and typing club, I think, is what we used, and students could work on it at home and practice quite a bit. And again, the students that had that technology and broadband access at home saw larger growth because they were able to do that at home. Teachers are always cognizant about what students have at home and maybe what they don't, and we always work really hard to give equal access as much as possible, to give equal training time. We want to make sure all of our students are growing and mastering the skills they need to be successful in college and career. But unquestionably, that access to internet and broadband and technology at home makes a big difference.
All right. So, Heather, how about internet technology dependency among Loveland's higher education institutions?
Right. So, I mean, the main thing with technology is that every touch point associated with the college involves technology. And that can be from the very beginning of exploring Ames, from virtual tours or looking at the school and what courses or programs we have to offer. We have communication in every aspect, face-to-face, social media, telephone, etc. But technology is a part of every point. And the main thing is it's created access for folks that may not have had access otherwise. In the classroom, even the face-to-face classes have a learning management system, a course shell. So information that is occurring in face-to-face seat time classes is also put online for access to submit assignments. As college is very self-directed as well. And so that there is much work done outside the classroom. And so that, again, equitable access to is making sure that if things are put online, that they can be looked at or viewed in multiple mobile devices, and we think about that and how that format is, or creating ways to access those things if they do not have technology or internet in the home.
Great. JD, I'm going to throw this one towards you. How does curriculum and student-teacher internet access affect technology?
Yeah, well, as we see more and more of our systems and our curriculum becoming web-based, there's a constant need that's always increasing to get more bandwidth and more capacity available at all of our sites. We're regularly doing more rollouts for our students so that they've always got the devices that they need when they need them in the classroom. And this requires a pretty hefty infrastructure increase. This is more access points in the classrooms, more switches to handle them, and something else we monitor very regularly is the amount of bandwidth they're using, and we shift it accordingly.
I just wanted to add a funny story to that. A few years ago, at the Loveland campus, we had to increase our bandwidth because of the usage of TED Talks, videos, websites as substitutes for technology, and we even have open education resources now to help reduce the amount of resources and the cost of perhaps multiple resources. We were not able to function as well administratively when students were online accessing videos and classrooms were accessing videos, and we were trying to use our administrative tools, and so we had to increase our bandwidth to even function well.
Interesting.
Even in my own home, When you have videos running, sometimes it doesn't always work as well or as effectively as you want to as you're getting work done. You know, as a parent, and again, both of my kids have since graduated, but I really saw this evolution about midway through middle school for them as they were moving through high school, where everybody had to have, you know, a USB to be able to plug it in so that if they had capacity at home, they could take it and do their work at home. Really, by the end, for my students, by the end of the time that they were in high school, they were doing everything on a laptop, and students bring it in, they plug it in class to be able to do a presentation up on screen. It's that technology piece has just exponentially moved so quickly that they're really using skills that are happening in the business world on a regular basis in our classrooms.
Yeah, and I don't see that slowing down.
It's
No,
not slowing down.
That's
No.
absolutely right, and in fact, USB is maybe considered older technology
absolutely.
nowadays. Where
Absolutely.
even down in the elementary school level, we're using an LMS, perhaps like Google Classroom, where they're working collaboratively on one document, working different parts of a project, and sharing with each other as homework at home, and making sure that every person in that project or classroom has equitable access to that is not only important to them growing academically, but is also preparing them for what a lot of us have to do at work every day as well.
Exactly.
Is communicating over a broadband internet.
Do you see a lot of the students that don't have equitable access at the higher education and all the way down K through 12? Are there pieces that are missing, or parts of the city that are missing?
My experience is, in short, yes. Everybody works hard to make sure that everyone can get the project done, that they can work together. They might meet at a library or go to a teammate's house, but it's not. It doesn't flow as what we might think of as what we think of for 2018 collaboration and communication online.
If you have 4 students that are working on a project and they each have access at home, then they can work on it independently in their own time around whatever schedules for work or sports or whatever they might have, and then they can communicate through that project. If you have a student on that team who maybe doesn't have that access at home, it just creates some roadblocks. It can get done, and people make sure it can get done, but it does create
A little more friction.
and certainly probably more time, honestly, being spent just in that back and forth of getting to a location.
And we try to accommodate as well as we can with free Wi-Fi on the campus. The library, you can check out devices, tablets, laptops in case you don't have your own technology. And then for example, we have a math class that meets face-to-face, but the lectures are recorded through Zoom. Students can access that recording whenever they want to. And so we try, and my point with that is not always having synchronous meetings online or where students have to meet at the same time. So if they have access issues and they need to do it on their own time, then providing asynchronous learning experiences. In addition to that, support courses or workshops if the technology literacy isn't there, and so that we often see that learning curve might be a little slower or take more time, and we recognize that and acknowledge that and work with that.
Great, thank you all. So I'm going to present this question to the group, so feel free to chime in as well. We talked about it a little bit before, but how do schools communicate with parents and students, online portals, apps? Tell me a little bit more about that. So you've mentioned a few already, but...
A lot of it's things like Infinite Campus is a big example. It's how teachers and how teachers go in and record their students, manage them, monitor them, and parents can log in and check on how their students are doing through that. Also, a lot of the communication goes on online, just for planning conferences, getting registered, everything like that.
And then, it's almost infinite, not to play off Infinite Campus, but it actually is. I'm thinking about one of the things that we deal with a lot through the foundation, of course, are scholarships. And more you're finding scholarships and scholarship applications are online. In fact, we are just now moving forward with one for the foundation specific for our scholarships that is an online portal for students to be able to access the applications and the different types of scholarships and whether or not they're eligible. And then playing that back out, it's not just about the upfront, it's also for the folks that are evaluating scholarships and then paying those scholarships out and everything else. So it's a multi-purpose platform but it's online,
Right.
and it needs access. So that's just one, again, on the other spectrum, not just in the classroom, but also on the other side.
Sure.
And then with Ames, we have multiple methods of contact with our students. Again, there's that learning management system. Our software, like Infinite Campus's Desire to Learn, which has the classroom, the portals. But then we have social media and our website, Ames Radio, Ames TV, so multiple ways of communicating what is needed for them to be successful, whether it's organizationally or academically.
Great, thank you. If you're just joining us, I'm Lindsay Bashline with Loveland Water and Power. We are here today with some education experts to talk about education and the internet. So if you're joining us live, feel free to post any questions or comments you have below, and hopefully we'll get to those here shortly. So back to our questions. What about families or college students who might not have access to the internet at home? How do schools work with them? We've talked a little bit more about that, but knowing that collaboration is important, how do you make sure that nobody's left behind in that sense?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, it really is, because so many things are automated now. You know who those families are in a lot of cases, and you certainly, schools, district, everyone, college, I'm sure, reaches out, but it's often not as immediate as it is for everyone else.
Do you have a sense as to why they may not have access? Is it, you mentioned there's two pieces. You have the actual access to the internet, but then the technology piece to it. Is it both of those sometimes? Is it the affordability of... Affordability.
I recently worked for a school district where we knew that only 30% of our students had access to the internet and or had a computer at home to use it. And 30% is a pretty small number if you think about recent technological advancements. And so, using a USB drive can be helpful, but if there's no USB port at home, it's sometimes it's going home and making a DVD of what the lesson might be. But teachers, parents, schools, we're all really cognizant of what we can do to make sure that we're doing everything we can to give everyone that same step up. But without access to broadband internet or technology, it's tough to get to where we kind of expect everyone should be nowadays.
Great. Kim, you work with the Thompson Education Foundation. How does technology and the internet impact some of the work, the grant work that you do specifically?
Sure. So we do a variety of different things, but one of the programs that we're very well known for in the community is our Great Idea Grants, which are our teacher classroom grants. And really, when those applications come in every spring, and we award that money out every May in a big celebration for the classrooms, 80 to 85% of them have some sort of technology included in that grant. It may not necessarily be one piece of technology, or if it is, it's because it's part of a bigger lesson plan. But it can run the gamut from things like, we had one just this year for e-readers, which we think of those as being sort of ubiquitous, right? They're everywhere, or they're not necessarily a powerful tool like a computer with programs, but the way that they can utilize those in the classrooms for students who English is a second language or who have some development disabilities makes a big difference. So it can be something all the way from that all the way up to that 3D printer that they then use to translate the storytelling in a third grade classroom. So it's definitely significant. And we also, though, when we get closer to that process of who we're going to award the grants with, we have to reach out to our technology class or a department to say, okay, these are the ones we're looking at. Can this be accommodated? Because just because we buy it doesn't mean that it can be accommodated, because if it doesn't have the bandwidth, then it doesn't do any good.
Right. All right. Let's see. With some of the trends in education that could impact, what are some of the trends in education that could impact how schools use technology? I think you kind of alluded, there's some cool things out there, but we may not be able to use them all. But what are some of the trends that we see upcoming?
Some of the most interesting ones that are going on lately is kind of getting rid of this old idea of a computer lab, you know, taking kids into there and getting them to work, whereas
The Oregon Trail? No?
yeah, exactly. That's what I grew up with. But you know, now it's taking the devices to the kids, whether it's a one-to-one situation where each kid has their own assigned to them, or a mobile lab of Chromebooks or something like that, where each kid can be in a classroom and work on this. And the focus here is that we're going away from kids going and, you know, going into a room full of computers and learning to work with computers, to kids working on the subjects that are important to them and using the computers to augment that work and that research.
Anything?
Well, I'll go after you.
Sure. So, in my experience as a technology computer teacher, we still had some computer labs, but in our older grades, we would have one-to-one. And oftentimes I would get questions of, how come we have a technology class? Shouldn't it just be a normal tool that's used in the classroom like anything else? And the answer is absolutely. Of course it should. But to use that technology correctly and productively and collaboratively the right way, you have to train those skills. And so at a younger age, I certainly believe it's important that training very specific skills. And in fact, I think recently the Colorado legislature passed a board to look into what particular skills using ISTE standards, I believe, should be taught at K-12 levels, whether it's at a specific computer class or throughout the day as a regular classroom teacher. I mean, to me, broadband is utility the way I think of electricity is you need it to be successful, either academically or in college or career, in the same way as you need to teach those skills of how to use technology to be productive, to be collaborative. So using an LMS or a learning management system, Google Classroom, using a Google Doc where 3 people can be on it at the same time or at different times but still see the work that's being done. Really a lot of what the work is required of us today. Teaching how to do that explicitly with a 12-year-old is very effective and important, and you need the technology to do it, and you need the broadband to do it.
To add to that, and you brought up more things, I was like, oh, you're right. To add multiple things there are, I mean, technology is a tool, and I mean, the trend is more online, and we have degrees in online, and online learning is just growing and growing in our world of education. But we have to remember it's a tool to provide extraordinary experiences that maybe couldn't be provided otherwise. And to touch on those skills that you mentioned, of course, and we always talk about skills to make them successful in the work world, so problem solving, conflict resolution, collaboration, teamwork. Technology is being used in many ways to provide some of those experiences that might be harder to coordinate. And just some cool things that are happening, because you mentioned like what's being used. You know, there's not with AIMS, but an accounting course that uses the gaming, the War of Worlds, to teach accounting skills in a way, an alternative way of looking at things. Ames Community College, for example, can provide some real-world experiences through technology in a face-to-face classroom. For example, we have an animatage table, which, you know how, typically we could look at bisections of anatomy and see the human body, but this is showing what is happening in the human body physically in front of folks when you're manipulating certain things for perhaps our nursing program or EMTs, for example. Same with the wildland fire science. There is a table that emulates what is happening with wind, rain, fire, and everything that is going on with our wildfires. And if they were to apply a certain technique to mitigating that fire or putting out the fire, what would happen elsewhere? And they're able to use technology to see these things live. So there's just really cool things going on in addition to these are tools to provide the skills needed to be successful.
Great, that's great.
Just to finish up, I suppose, is if you think about learning a skill, the more you do it, the better you are at it.
Absolutely.
If students only did math and reading at school, they would be less proficient and take them longer to become masters at those skills. And it's the same as technology. Is that 2-year-old might be fumbling with the iPhone just fine, but to learn the specific skills to use it as a productivity tool takes you have to practice it, and someone has to teach it explicitly.
Great.
Generally.
All right, so we do have one more question before we hop over to any audience questions that we may have. But for those Loveland residents who may not know anyone in school today, what would you say to them is the biggest need that schools or families have when it comes to internet access?
It's been kind of said, but it's equitable access. As everyone's mentioned, having the ability to go work with these tools off hours, on your own, when it would be the best for you is really valuable. And again, from the Thompson side, we do a lot of communication based almost entirely off the internet. Infinite Campus, Facebook, however teachers are communicating with their parents.
You know, and when you think about it, you know, we talk a lot about school to life, right? And so, and students being able to have the skills that they need when they graduate from high school to go to school, to go into the workforce, to do whatever their next steps are. And the workforce and higher education is all about technology. And so if they aren't gathering those skills in the K-12 level, and a stepped process where they can be ingrained and learned and built upon, you know, creating that foundation for them, then they're going to be at a disadvantage when they step into those next arenas. And it could be the business of the person who doesn't have kids in the district, but they're using technology in their business on a daily basis. The people that they're going to be looking at to hire need that skill set.
The future workforce, for sure.
Future workforce, 100%.
All right. Let me see here. It doesn't look like we have any other questions, so I sincerely want to thank you all for joining us today. It was
Thanks.
a good conversation, I think, and hopefully helpful to our audience. So as a reminder, if we weren't able to answer any of the questions that you have today, do post it down below, and we'll be sure to respond and follow back up on that. And don't forget to engage with us online at cityofloveland.org/broadband. You can map your speed, ask questions, and stay posted on news. So thank you again for joining us, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.